Okay, here's a new one that has new for us, but not new in the community that lives around airports, and that's pollution. I want to explain this a little bit in depth to bring you aware that the aviation fuel that goes into these piston aircraft, this aviation fuel is 100 octane. The octane that we buy for our gasoline, the fuel we buy for our cars, take a look when you're at the gas station at 87, 91, or somewhere in between. You can get a couple of different grades that pretty much the highest is 91, and it's no lead gas. Well, the fuel that is going into these airplanes is leaded fuel. Lead is added to the fuel as it was way back when in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, added to fuel to be able to raise the octane level. But of course we knew, and the EPA and everybody else knew way back then, that lead was poisonous to us as humans. So they outlawed lead across the country. It's outlawed. It was outlawed in 1978 in paint. So no paint that was put on your homes, your toys, your cars, none of that could have lead in it. Our kids, remember, I don't know if you remember the stories of kids peeling paint and eating it or chewing on their toys, and there was lead in it. Bad, bad stuff. 1994, it was outlawed in automobiles. So a long time we have not had any lead in the fuel in our cars or in the environment, except for gasoline in these piston-driven aircraft, which is most of the aircraft that are at French Valley Airport. So they're putting in their airplanes 100 octane fuel that contains lead. When the engine runs, the lead doesn't burn up, doesn't go away, comes out of the tailpipe. Here's a map from the EPA of basically Riverside County. These little purple dots are showing some of the sources of lead in our community, in Riverside County. Note that French Valley Airport has the largest circle, which indicates that French Valley Airport is the largest contributor of lead in Riverside County. This one over here to the upper right. The next one is the Hemet Airport, and then there's all these other little things that have some contribution, typically some kind of an industry that contributes a little bit. This airport is contributing the largest amount of lead in Riverside County. Pretty amazing. And how much? And this is from the EPA and some other institute. They're showing 544 pounds of lead. This study was done in 2017. A year is being laid down over our neighborhoods. It comes out of the tailpipe and it goes down. Lead goes down to the ground, falls out of the atmosphere and lays itself on the ground or on any other surface in our community. And one of those surfaces, after it comes out of the tailpipe of the aircraft, oh, I'm sorry. Let's talk about how that works and why it works. Sorry. I got this picture of an inside of a cockpit, and the pilot here has got his hand down the controls here, the red knob in his throttle. So he's taking off from the airport as I described in that takeoff procedure. So this is full RPM, full throttle as he roars down the runway. But in addition to giving it full throttle and full fuel, he also has to, and this is technical, maybe some of you old carburetor guys understand, has to richen up the fuel air mixture that goes into the carburetor, because these engines are air cooled and they're really getting hot. So when they pour more fuel into the engine on takeoff, that fuel helps cool, unburned, cool the engine a little bit. So it's full throttle and full rich, which means maximum amount of pollution is coming out of that airplane on takeoff. Whenever they're doing that full throttle, it's just pouring the fuel into it, which means all that lead's coming out of the back end of that airplane. They've done studies around this run-up area where I've got the arrow And all airports are the same. This particular test run up for start area, lots of pollution, but it continues full throttle, full rich as they run down the runway, take off, full power, full power, full power. And these guys are still really cranking the power in that turn right over. They're supposed to lean their engine down. That means the engine quiets a little bit. Right? All this stuff adds to the problem. Where's that pollution landing? It was landing on us, but it's landing on our kids, landing in our communities, on our schools. Here is Nicholas Valley Elementary School. I don't know if you guys know exactly where that's at. It's typically in that crosswind turn right after the airplanes take off from the airport. And this is a picture. There it is, Nicholas Valley School with an airplane that's maybe 700, 800 feet above that airport. As they make their turn, they also fly over Alamos Elementary School. This is off of Poroy in Marietta Hot Springs. And across the way is Bella Vista Middle School. So here they are again, flying over the school and dumping all that pollution on the school. So here's all the schools that I marked out in that area. And the two I want you to, or three I want you to make note of, Nicholas Elementary and Alamos and Bella Vista. So now I'm going to overlay on top of that how these airplanes fly, right? So this is that turn, the crosswind turn when they take off, and depending on how far and how big they're making that oval, they're flying over Nicholas, tons of time over Nicholas. This one's the heavy impact of the school. They also are flying over Alamos and Bella Vista as they make their downwind. And here is one aircraft, just one that we tracked again. And I put Nicholas Elementary on this. You can see the white roof of Nicholas Elementary. You can see how that airplane is right over that school, right over the area. And on this, you can't even see Bella Vista and Alamos, how many times that airplane is flying over. And they're flying pretty low to the ground here, again, because this is a higher elevation from the ground. So those three schools heavily impacted. The most is Nicholas, because again, full throttle, full power, full rich, everything's going on as they fly over that school and dump all that on the ground. But they also dump it on our playgrounds. So this one is off of Nicholas. This is the Pirate Playground in Temecula off of Nicholas. So it's flying over that, settles on all those cross pieces and all that. And here's the water spray park in Temecula. So it's happening. So why don't we just go to no lead fuel for these aircraft? Well, yeah, they've been talking about it for a long time. They supposedly have different fuels for it, but there is no incentive to switch. The aviation gas is a pretty small gasoline market. So in order to make that no lead fuel, they've got to redo formulations at the refinery. They have to change the infrastructure at the airport, different tanks, or whatever. They got to put a lot of effort into it, and there's a pretty strong resistance from many pilots. They got older engines, and they're scared that non-leaded fuel is going to damage their engine. We have to have the lead in our fuel. That same argument was used back in the 70s and 80s when gasoline for automobiles was reduced in lead and eventually. But what about the legal recourses? Sorry, there's none. I mean, you write your congressman, that we hope, and there's some big nationwide movements to get this lead out of this fuel. But right now, there's no legal recourse. You can't go and say, stop putting lead over my neighborhoods. Sorry, this has just killed me when we found this out, that all this lead is being dumped on our neighborhoods, in your victory gardens and your playgrounds and on your roofs and your backyards and all that. Not much we can do about it legally.